This video is for students that are absent on the day that we're covering adding fractions so that you are able to complete the makeup assignment from home. When you're adding fractions, you need to have a common denominator. Okay, so I'll put two fractions up there. So let's say you have 1/2 plus 3/5. And if you think of the denominator as being the unit, then you realize like they need to match. So think about, say, having something in feet and inches. If you have one of your numbers is in feet, like say 3 feet plus 5 inches, and you want to convert that to like a single number, you don't want to say 3 feet, and 5 inches. What you need to do is get all of them into the same unit. So you could either convert the feet into inches or you can convert the inches into feet, either way, and then you would be able to add them together. So that's kind of what we have going on there is we have these different units. So for example, if you think of the two whole bars here, one of them is divided into halves, the other is divided into fifths. One of them you're dealing with like one of a much bigger unit, and then you're dealing with 3 of a much smaller unit. So if you want to find out how much you have all together, we need to get those units to match. So a general strategy that will typically work is if you multiply the two denominators together, that'll give you a common denominator. It's not necessarily the least common denominator. In this case, it is, but it's not always, but it will always work. So what we do is this. We take the first fraction and we multiply it by the second denominator over itself. So that is 5/5, which is equal to 1. When you multiply a fraction, you just multiply going straight across. So we do 5 times 1 and 5 times 2, and that gives us 5/10. Okay, and so if you were to divide these blocks up into tens, or 5, 6, 7, I don't know if I did that right, then you would be able to deal with the same unit. So tenths would work. Now on the other fraction, we're going to multiply by 2/2, and 2/2 is 1. So again, you're not changing the value of the fraction. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 5 times 2 is 10. So essentially what we've got there is 5/10 plus 6/10. So now we've got it in the same unit. It's like having all feet or all inches, and what we have is 11/10. Now, a lot of directions or instructions will tell you that you should turn that into a mixed number. If you're cooking, sure, go for it, but not if you are in math. You can leave that as 11/10. And what that means is if you were to come over here and add those two shaded sections together, it would take up like an entire section plus an extra tenth. So it would be like 11/10. So you'd have 10/10, and then you'd have that 11/10 out there, the 11th one, or 1 1/10. So in class, I'll do a couple of examples of these. So we could have, say, 2/3 plus 5/6. Now in this one, you could do this. You could say 6/6 and then 3/3 and multiply by 1 that way. But you don't need to, because 6 is a multiple of 3. So just to kind of show you how that would work, like you could go with 12/18 and 15/18, and that would be like what, 27/18. Okay, and then that could be simplified because those are both divisible by 3. So we could divide by 3, and that gives us 9. Oh no, we could do 9. Sorry, I didn't even pick the biggest number there. Just kidding. Okay. So we could divide by 9, and that would simplify to what? 3/2. Okay. But a better way to do that would be to recognize that 6 would be the least common denominator. So you could just do this, multiply by 2/2. 2/2 would be, of course, 1. And then you would have 4/6 plus 5/6, which would give you 9/6. And then that also can be simplified. So we're not really avoiding that, but okay, and there's our 3/2 again. But what that does is it keeps the numbers a little bit smaller, so a little bit more user-friendly there. And then let's do one more example. Well, actually, let's go into like the next thing that we'll be doing. So suppose you had 1 over sine theta plus 1 over cosine theta. All right. So this is actually getting into what we'll do next class, because we are going to bring the fraction work back over to our trigonometry. So remember that we are in Algebra 2. The same strategy works here though. So you would multiply by cosine theta over cosine theta and sine theta over sine theta. Okay, and then cosine theta times 1 is cosine theta. 1 times sine theta is sine theta. So you could have cosine theta over cosine theta sine theta. So you're just multiplying the denominators together. And then sine theta over cosine theta sine theta. And then, of course, like now you've got a common denominator. So now you could write that as a single fraction. Now, in this case, I don't think I made that any better by doing that, but in a lot of our trig identities, like it would make it better. So you would have something that you could cancel out when you did that, but not in this case. But the point of it was to show you how the trigonometry actually works the same as the numerical values. So now that we've gone over that, you watched this like quick, like 6-7 minute video. You should be okay to do the worksheet part of the assignment, which your classmates either did in class or finished for homework, depending on which class period you're in. But if you were absent, it is a required grade for you.